Do not be afraid of struggle. Do not be afraid if you're in a season of your life that seems it's more of a valley than a peak. Learn to embrace that. Welcome back, everyone, to Midweek Modern Craftsman. What a week it has been. Nick and I dig into that a little bit on the main podcast this week. I'm not going to dig into that. It's going to be out of sight, out of mind for me as of now. Maybe at some point we'll circle back, but I don't have the headspace or the energy or really want to dive into the state of the world right now. It's frustrating, it's divisive, and I don't really see much real purpose in it. So instead, I'm going to talk about some experience that I have and something that I was thinking a little bit about the other night when I was laying in bed and experiencing challenging seasons of life, challenging seasons of business. And when we look back on life, it's funny how the moments that we often cherish the most aren't when things were easy. They're the times that we were stretched, we were tested, maybe even broken down a little bit. The late nights, the long days, the challenges we thought that we would never be able to handle. Those are the seasons that become our best and our fondest memories. So today I want to talk about why struggle often becomes the foundation of joy and how the hardest times end up being the ones that we hold on to the most and the most tightly. When you think back, pause that for a second. I'm doing my best. So we have a new editor that Doug brought on board, and he's teaching us how to record podcasts that will be on YouTube. So you can check out Modern Craftsman on YouTube. Go on to YouTube, type in @Modern Craftsman. Learning how to get on YouTube, respond to comments, check us out. We're putting a lot of energy towards there. You can watch the podcast. One of the things that I do not do is look into the camera while I am recording a podcast for many reasons. One, I'm reading my notes. I'm reading on my prep work. Two, I find it very awkward to look into a camera. Anything that I do, if I hold my phone and look at it, I feel awkward. If I look in a mirror, I feel awkward. If I'm recording a podcast and I have to look into the camera, I feel awkward. So I'm working on that. I'm getting better just to make the YouTube experience more enjoyable. Also, sign up for the Modern Craftsman newsletter. That's all I have for you. Let's get to the podcast. So when you think back on your life and the moments that you cherish the most, rarely, at least for me, is it when things were easy. And that's completely different than when I'm in those moments, because when I'm in those moments, they can be nothing short of hell at times. But more often, the times that I've struggled, the times that I've been tested, have been the most profound and enjoyable aspects of my life in hindsight. I understand that that's a very strong paradox. Why do we look back fondly on these hard times, on these challenging times, on these times where we didn't have everything that we wanted? Asking myself that question, a lot of times it's because these struggles are anchored by our passions, by our goals, and by us following our dreams. And I think that we are chasing something that means so much to us, that brings on these struggles, that creates these hardships in our lives. And I think that if we weren't, we probably would just walk away from them. But we decide to continue on, to trudge through the shit and to surmount those mountains so that we have something better. And I think that these struggles are often rooted in us following a passion or us following a dream. And so when we come to the other side of that, or even if we don't, even if we just learn lessons from that, I think that that's why it's so important to us. And that's why in hindsight, it's so satisfying to look back on those times and say, you know what? They were terrible. I didn't think I was going to come out of that. I struggled. I didn't have food. We didn't have electricity. We had nothing. We weren't sure how we were going to make our mortgage payment, but I was chasing a dream, and that's all that I had. And in hindsight, those were some of the best times of my life. Just chasing that dream and struggling and doing anything and everything within your power to make that happen, to make those dreams come to fruition, I think is really cool. And a lot of people don't experience that. Many people as business owners do, as athletes do, as people who just want to make a difference, want to be high performers. But I think a lot of people lean more towards comfort, ease, rather than chasing that passion regardless of the cost associated with it. Some examples of that, which I often say that we are the starving artists, but actual starving artists, the people who don't have anything, but they have this internal drive and this need to create something, create art, share their music, share their fine art, share whatever it may be. However, that art is manifesting itself, those people chasing that dream and giving up everything else in their life just to be able to speak that language to other people. You have the athlete who's going to pick up and they're going to move to Colorado to be able to train at elevation, to be the best athlete that they can be, to meet their full potential and to train with other high level athletes. There's difficulty in that. There's difficulty in getting up and leaving everything that you're comfortable with, obviously, but then there's difficulty in the training that comes along with that, physical, mental, emotional. Those people look back on those times in their lives and they probably cherish them more than other times. The husband and wife who decide to pick their family up and move them elsewhere, even though they're established, even though they have what they need in order to create a better life or a better education for their children. All of these experiences create struggle, they create strife, there's challenges associated with them, and it's probably very difficult for them. I know that anytime I've made a massive change in my life, it's been very, very difficult. And I question the change and I question if I'm going to come ahead and is it all worth it? And typically at the end of the day, even if I meet my goal or I don't, it's worth it because I am so much stronger of a person. I have more life experience. I'm a more dynamic individual because of it. One example of this for me personally, which is fitting for this podcast, is when I started my business. I had just got done college. I was 23 years old. I had recently stopped drinking. I was looking to make some changes in my life. I knew I didn't want to go work for somebody. I didn't want to work in corporate America. And I decided that I was going to start my own business. I had no business acumen. I had no business being in business. I wasn't extremely confident in the tools, actual saws, wood, how a job came together. I had a little bit of experience not doing it right. I didn't understand the permitting. I didn't understand how to operate my business from a business perspective legally, insurances, accounting, pricing. I didn't know anything about it. And it was really hard and I struggled and I was stressed and I was anxious. I was at this crossroads in my life that I wanted to take a different path and I chose a really difficult one and I chose to be self-taught and I didn't have the confidence to tell people that I didn't know and I didn't have the confidence to ask for help. So I went down this road basically alone. And while I was doing that, it was extremely scary. And I wouldn't recommend that. It was extremely scary. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this. You don't have enough confidence in yourself and in your business to tell people, yeah, I don't know. You don't have enough confidence to reach out to somebody and say, hey, can you help me with this? Or, hey, I made a mistake. You have imposter syndrome. And I look back on those times in my life and they created so much angst for me. They created so much stress, so much anxiety. I didn't know if this is what I wanted to do. But every day that I got up, every day that I put my boots on, every day that I went to the job, I gained more perspective. I gained more insight, more clarity, more confidence, and it made it a little bit easier. And the pain of the struggles faded. It went away. And those jobs that I didn't think I was going to get through, I looked at with a much lighter vantage point. It didn't seem as dire as when I was in the situation experiencing it. I made a ton of mistakes that cost me days, weeks, months of my time and money. But in hindsight, making those mistakes determining why I made the mistake in the first place, how to fix it, and how to never make it again, were when I was the most driven in life. It was when the successes felt the most rewarding to me. I was creating an agency for myself. I was becoming an adult and I was blazing my own trail, which at that point in my life was cutting the cord of adolescence. I was chasing my own dreams. I was making a name for myself. And while it was so painful and difficult in the moment, as soon as I got past that, it wasn't that bad. And maybe we become numb to pain the further we are removed from it. But you also have to consider that as you progress, as you learn, you look back on these times and you gain so much confidence and so much fulfillment understanding that I was at my breaking point, and rather than giving up and rather than breaking, I put my head down and I pushed through and I crested the hill that I was looking to climb. And I think that's responsible for a lot of that easing of pain and that fading of pain more so than just being removed from it from a time capacity. Why these difficult times later feel rewarding to me is a very interesting paradox. And it's something that I know it going into projects. I know it when I'm experiencing something or when I'm struggling with something or when I'm at a pinch point, a pain point in my life. And even though I know it, I can't use that to reason my way out of it. I'm still stuck in that. And understanding that at some point I'm going to look back on this and I'll have fond memories of this, or it'll be a turning point in my life. It'll be a catalyst for a new direction, a new path for greater and bigger successes. I still can't reason my way out of it, understanding that that's typically the case. And I wonder how this can be also evident. You understand that this is going to happen while in that shitstorm, life seems so difficult and insurmountable that we're literally never going to get ahead. We're never going to survive this. I've had times when I was younger where I asked Rachel, "This is so hard. Does it have to be this hard? Is it this hard for everyone? How are we going to afford children? How are we going to be able to buy cars for our kids? How are we going to be able to renovate our house? How are we going to be able to afford college? How are we going to be able to afford groceries?" And it just seems when you're in those positions that you're never going to be able to get out. You're never going to dig yourself out. It just seems like if you're treading water, great. But a lot of times it feels as though you're sinking. Treading water would be progress for me at some of my lowest times where it didn't even feel as though I was treading water. It just felt that I was sinking faster than I could swim. So growth obviously helps combat this paradox, understanding who you are, where you've come from, and that this too shall pass. Overcoming adversity, gaining insight, perspective, building that resilience that whether it's a job, whether it's a relationship, you understand that you can come out ahead of this, that you've dealt with bigger things, that it's only a struggle right now, that you will overcome this, right? Typically, we have our health. All things short of that, we can generally push through and we can come out ahead. And I think that life experience plays a big part in that. I think that having confidence in yourself, I think that these struggles and these experiences just build numbness to the fact that you have not numbness, but you have an ability to do anything that you want. And I think that sometimes we will bite off more than we can chew due to this numbness or this ignorance, because we've been able to solve every problem that we've faced in life so far. And that's a good thing for me, right? If you don't believe in yourself, if you don't believe that you can do it, if you don't believe that any challenge that faces you are going to be able to solve, that I think that it's going to make life very challenging, and it's probably going to create a lot of frustration, a lot of anxiety for you. I've found meaning in my life through challenges, not necessarily through comfort. I found who I'm meant to be. I've found who I have the capacity to be, and I've found what it means to dig in, muster up all the courage, all the energy, all the focus that I have to get myself out of whatever pinch I'm in. And that has been found in challenges, not in ease of life and not in comfort. if I've sat back and I've let go of the reins and just say, I'm going to go wherever I go, wherever this journey takes me, that hasn't created the best version of myself, the strongest version of myself, the most confident version of myself. It's when I faced these things head on, when I've experienced them, when I've acknowledged them, I've spoken about them, I've held myself accountable to these things, and I've learned and I've grown and I've come out on the other side. And these challenges have created so much meaning in my life, more so than just sitting back and letting time take me where it's going to take me. So I want to talk about a couple of stories personally for me that I've experienced what I'm talking about. School was always one of them. I didn't care about school at all, but I cared about my results in school. I also didn't really put in the necessary time, but I wanted the results. So it created a lot of stress for me. I wouldn't do my homework. I wouldn't study except for right before a test. I was a good test taker. I understood how to work the system to be a great student, but I didn't put the time in. I was working the system. I knew what I had to do. I wouldn't recommend that. I wouldn't set that example for my children. I try to encourage them to be less like me, do what I say, not as I do. But throughout high school, throughout college, I wanted to, more so college, because I think that I was on my own and I was really holding myself accountable to that, especially as I got older. In high school, I really just didn't give a shit at all. And I think that I was probably standing up against everything that stood for. And maybe that was punk rock of me to kind of stick it to the man and not want to be a perfect or an ideal student, but still get good grades. But in college, more so, because that was me. Nobody knew me. It was just me. My parents weren't there. They didn't know who I was from the town I was from. I had that autonomy that it all fell on my shoulders. I still didn't necessarily want to put the work in, but I wanted good grades. I wanted this to be the first step in my journey towards being an accountable adult. But most importantly, whether I didn't go to class, whether I wasn't able to stay focused enough to read a single chapter of the book that we were supposed to read or be studying, I wanted my GPA to indicate otherwise. So throughout college, I had to balance working basically full time while going to school, and this was difficult. I had met Rachel my first semester or trimester, because Drexel's on trimesters of college. She was getting ready to graduate. I was just going back to school. It was difficult to balance a relationship. I was still drinking at this point. So balancing a lot of my internal struggles, my anxiety, not really coping with it in a healthier, practical manner, and maintaining a GPA that I wanted to not only maintain my academic scholarship, but to be above the standard. And also, I had it in my head and my mentality, and I didn't necessarily need to do this, but I wanted to work. So I would schedule my classes for 2 days a week. I'd commute to school, and I would go to school from 8 a.m. till 10 at night. I'd take the train in, the train out, and then I'd work Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I wanted to do this. I wanted to push myself. Nobody said I had to do this, but I wanted to be able to tell people I worked my way through college. I did all my classes. I graduated, and I maintained a great GPA while doing that. And I can recall, again, still drinking at this point, just really struggling with keeping my head on straight and balancing having a healthy social life, dating, coming into my own, trying to find out my direction in life, and also working, getting good grades, being a good student. And there were times where I wanted to drop out for the second time, that I didn't want to do it, that I didn't want to work, and that I was so uncertain of the direction that I needed to go, but I pushed through and I continued to do what I had to do. And I decided to stop drinking before I graduated from college. I decided to lean on Rachel to help guide me in the direction that I needed to. I decided to maintain my work schedule, to make money, to be driven, and to also get the grades that I wanted to do. And it was never easy. I struggle with it a lot, especially once I stopped drinking, because now it was a big coping technique for me. not a healthy one, but a coping technique for me. So when I got rid of that in my life, now I had this other challenge to deal with all of this anxiety and feelings that I had never felt in the past 5, 6 years since I turned 16 years old. And that was really tough for me. And I can recall being in college and just being pretty unhappy at times and stressed out. And after I graduated from college, I look back on it and I don't have regrets about it. And I look at the struggles that I went through and the focus that I maintained and the GPA that I graduated with and the work ethic that I developed by maintaining the schedule that I did in the relationship with Rachel and getting engaged. And I look back on it and it was a trying but very satisfying season of my life. I think about buying our second home. Rachel, I was going to work, or I came home from work one day. It was on Halloween, and we weren't trying to have another kid, but we also weren't not trying to have another kid. And if you don't have kids, that might not make sense to you, but if you have kids, you'll understand. And she told me she was pregnant. I knew that at this point we had to move out of our 1,000 square foot single bathroom house. We had to get her a new car that could fit a family. We also were going to have the expense and the responsibility of a second child. That was really, really difficult for me to stomach. We had to put our house up for sale. We had to sell our house. We had to buy a new house. We had to temporarily transition in with her parents when the septic failed on the house that we were buying. I went on a bit of a manic spiral. And in that situation, during that part of my life, I didn't understand how I was going to make this all happen, how we were going to buy this house, how we were going to afford this house, how we were going to afford a second child, a new car, Rachel not working while we had the baby, getting a new job because we were moving after she had the baby, managing life, business. We struggled a lot. I struggled more than I ever had in my entire life. But when we made it happen, when I came out of the other side, when I finally got my head back on straight and we were okay in our marriage, we were okay financially, we were in the house, everything was making sense and where it should be. I look back on those times as a huge turning point, not only in my business life, but my personal life as well. It changed everything in my life for the better. And it took a lot of suffering to do that. So I look back on that memory, not necessarily with the fondest experience, but I am grateful. I have a ton of gratitude for what it provided me to get to where I am now. But in the moment, I couldn't see the end. I couldn't see my way out of it. It was a huge struggle for me, but I can appreciate what that sparked within me and who that made me become, both personally and professionally. So why do we think this struggle often builds these cherished memories? To me, struggle can open the door to create closeness with others. Generally, when you're struggling, whether you have a wife, you have a friend, you have a network of people, you have a therapist, you're going to lean on those people who are the closest to you to help you get through whatever shitstorm you're trying to make your way through. So it can really strengthen the relationship with your wife, like the experience that I had. In the moment, there was a lot of strife between us, but when we came out on the other side, most of that was because of me. We have a stronger relationship now than we had prior to that, and it continues to grow stronger and stronger. There's days where we just are at each other's throats, but for the most part, we treat each other well and we appreciate what we have. We love each other and we have a really great marriage, but it wasn't always the case prior to that. I have friendships that I maintain today that during my lowest points, those people came out of the woodwork. Those people understood that I was struggling. Those people made a point to lean into me and support me and check in on me to make sure that I was good. And there's people who also have just came and helped me paddle out of the mess that I was in. They pulled me up above water. They gave me a helping hand. They lended me whatever support I was needed at that point. And without those struggles, without those bad or difficult experiences, those opportunities would have never presented themselves. Being able to find the people who you can relate to most in life, that's the foundation of the Modern Craftsman podcast, why we started it. None of us felt as though we had a network behind us. None of us felt as though we had a community of people, that we had others that we could lean on, we could question, we could hold us accountable. And that was one of the big reasons that we started the podcast. A lot of other people wanted in on the relationship that we had, on the conversations that we were having, that they wanted to be able to not only communicate with us, they wanted to be a part of those conversations. And at times they just wanted to be able to, whether it's complain, bitch up, empathize, whatever it is, they wanted to be a part of that. And having that network of people who have a similar mindset, a similar life experience, have struggled similar things as you, is really, really important. And that's a big reason why we continue to record this podcast today, because there's so many people out there who reach out to us and say, hey, I really appreciate the podcast. It's done this for me. When I was going through that, it helped me get through whatever situation I was experiencing. So that's the fundamental foundation of the Modern Craftsman: finding others you can relate with, sympathizing with them, empathizing with them, sometimes just sitting in the shit together. That's a huge part of who we are and what we do. Understanding that you're not alone, overcoming these hardships, and then giving back, teaching, helping others avoid the same mistakes are also a big reason that I feel these struggles help create a bonding experience for people. If I go through something, if I make a mistake, if I go through a hardship or experience a low in life, and I come out of the other side and people helped me, I want to be able to pay that forward. I want to be able to help the next person. I want to ensure that people around me who are struggling with something similar don't go through the same thing. Struggles also help you shape your identity. Nobody gets stronger from a life that's free of challenges. I'm a firm believer in that our losses are some of the biggest motivators for us, that struggle builds resilience, character, experience, and confidence. I think that struggle squashes entitlement, not only for yourself, but people around you. I think that the more that you've struggled, the more that you cannot identify with people who feel that they are entitled to certain things just because. If you want it, go out and get it. You're not entitled to anything in this life. And I think that I've learned that through hardship, and I've learned that through struggle. And it wasn't by something being handed to me, which to me breeds entitlement. It also creates a sense of achievement. Satisfaction for me comes from earning something, not just receiving it or being handed it. Anything that I've been handed in my life, while yes, it's exciting, it's not the same as when you've worked your ass off, saved the money to be able to buy it. And we all have this delusion that, hey, if we won the lottery, our life would be different. But I don't think, for me, yeah, I'd be able to buy some of the material possessions that maybe I want, that I don't need. But often those material possessions feel so much sweeter when I'm able to actually earn them myself. Struggle also builds perspective. How are we going to be able to enjoy the stillness of our lives without a lot of the complications and the chaos that we face? There's been times in my life where I didn't understand how I would make it another week, how I'd be able to finish a job while remaining sane, while remaining physically healthy. And I have. And there's been times where it's come close that I haven't. But these projects have created invaluable direction for me personally and professionally. They've taught me to throw my ego out the window, focus on what makes me happy and not what makes for an amazing Instagram post or a background for a wallpaper for my website. So I encourage all of you listeners to this podcast to reframe some of your current challenges. Nick and I just recorded something similar where it can be about positivity. Life can be about mindset. And what feels heavy right now may be the thing that you look back on as your best memory, as the best time of your life, as you had so very little, and as you earned more and more, as you made a name for yourself, as you developed your brand and built confidence, integrity, you may look back on those times as some of the most cherished and enjoyable times of your life. So you have to maintain positivity through that. You have to understand that this too shall pass, that this is going to make you better. This is going to make you stronger. These challenges, these problems, these hardships are going to define you one way or another. Your losses are going to define you one way or another. Do not come out on the short end of that stick. Allow them to motivate you to be the best version of yourself, to educate yourself, to learn, to grow, to make sure that you don't allow this to create a weaker version of yourself. To me, and I mentioned this to Nick, something that's been very helpful for me to make sure that I'm on the right path and I'm maintaining this mindset is what I would consider journaling. The midweek podcast, I sit down and every week I decide what I'm going to talk about. I create an outline, I populate that outline, and then I get on here and I record this conversation with nobody else. It's just me. And this is a form of therapy. This is a form of journaling for me. And I think if I thought about everyone who listened to this and what the intent is behind this, I may not be as open. I may not be as forthright. And I probably would hide a little bit more, be a little less transparent than I am. But I push that out of my mind and I just sit here and I think about what I wrote and I think about the questions that I use to prompt these answers. And I dig into myself and I inventory who I am. I inventory where I am and what I need to move forward. And at times the answers that I get aren't the answers that I want. And I decide to implement changes in my life. And if you do the same, I spend a few hours a week doing this. And it's been over a year and a half. I don't know exactly how long it's been, but when I sit down and I go through these things and I think about my life and I think about the challenges and the struggles and what I felt was insurmountable at times and how I've always come out on the other side, whether it's where I thought I was going to be or not, how much better of a person I am, how much stronger I am, how much more life experience I have. And I'm consciously spending time to understand this, to get into my own head, to get into my own heart and break down a lot of the walls that I wouldn't otherwise even engage with. And this serves for me as a therapy session, as journaling, and I would recommend you guys doing something of the same. You don't have to sit down and record a podcast, but for an hour a week, turn off your phone, turn off your computer, sit there and ask yourself some questions. Ask yourself the questions that I'm going through on this podcast and just see who you are and see where you stand and see how far you've come and how far you still want to go. Because if you just go through the motions and you're just going through your schedule on your phone and checking the boxes and doing what's required of you and not actually breaking down internal barriers or questioning what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you've grown, then I feel that you're just meandering through life somewhat aimlessly. Yeah, you may be ticking all the boxes. Like for me, you may be getting the good GPA, but are you doing it for the right reasons? Is it actual growth or is it just what appears to be growth to people outside of our network or outside of your own body? So I would definitely suggest that as to how to apply this mindset to your own personal life. So to put a bow on this conversation, do not be afraid of struggle. Do not be afraid if you're in a season of your life that seems it's more of a valley than a peak. Learn to embrace that. Understand that this may be a turning point in your life. This may present opportunity that you never knew existed. This may light a fire inside of you that creates a completely different version of you personally, professionally. And if everything were good all the time, I don't know how many people would dig deep down to make a change. If I weren't unhappy would I make a change? Would it be through boredom? Would it be through comparison? I don't know. But I think the more unhappy you are, the more that you struggle, the more that you look to make changes in your life. If you were a contributing member to society and you want to be the best version of yourself, I think unhappiness and struggle and challenges often can break you, but they also can build you up. They can serve as the catalyst for you changing your life, for being the strongest version of yourself. And I would encourage all of you, when you're in those lows, when you're in those challenges, to not hang your head, but to say, what do I have to do to prevent this from happening again, and how am I going to change and grow from it? And I think that a lot of times those opportunities, those losses, those struggles, those challenges serve as an opportunity to create the best version of who you are. And I would run with that. So I'll leave you with this. After listening to this, what is one past struggle that you can look back on fondly now and cherish? And what is one current struggle that you've been experiencing that you haven't quite been able to wrap your head around or come to terms with, that you feel has the potential to someday bring the same sense of accomplishment, joy, or just fulfillment in your life? That's it for today. I hope you guys and girls enjoyed this podcast. If you have any criticism, if you have any suggestions for topics, if you'd like a direction with the podcast, if you'd like something specifically answered as to business, personal life, whatever it may be, shoot me an email, tyler@trghomeconcepts.com. Make sure, again, to follow us on YouTube, as I remember to look at the camera. We are putting a lot more content on YouTube these days. You can still find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the normal podcast platforms, but check out YouTube as well. Again, if you need anything from me, you want to hop on a consulting call, I'm still doing roughly 1 or 2 of them per week. Tyler@trghomeconcepts.com. I can walk you through what that looks like, and we can get something lined up for you. I appreciate everyone hanging in. Spread the word. Join the newsletter. Subscribe on YouTube, and I'll catch you all next week.